Respect is a quiet thing. It does not always announce itself with grand gestures or loud praise. It is felt in the small moments, in the way someone listens when you speak, in the way they hold your truth as gently as their own, in the softness with which they acknowledge your presence. Respect is the unseen thread that holds every meaningful connection together. It is the bridge between hearts, the foundation for trust, the soil in which love, friendship, and understanding grow. When respect is present, relationships stand tall. When it is gone, the roots loosen, the walls crack, and the soul feels the fracture long before the mind admits it. You can endure many storms in this life. You can weather misunderstanding, disappointment, the occasional word that lands too heavy. You can forgive mistakes, overlook flaws, and continue to offer grace where grace is needed. But when respect begins to fade slowly, quietly, steadily, it leaves a wound that deepens with every passing day. You may not notice it at first. Disrespect does not always appear as shouting or cruelty. Sometimes it is a sigh of impatience where there once was tenderness. Sometimes it is an unreturned kindness, a forgotten promise, a dismissal disguised as a joke. Sometimes it is simply the absence of gratitude, the absence of care, the absence of consideration. Respect is the way someone acknowledges that your humanity is equal to theirs. It is the honoring of your dignity, your boundaries, your feelings, and your voice. And when that honoring begins to dim, your spirit senses the shift long before you dare to speak it. Something inside you tightens. Something inside you leans away. The heart knows when it is no longer being held with gentle hands. There is a sorrow that comes with recognizing that someone no longer holds you in the light they once did. It is a quiet sorrow, tender but profound, the kind that does not shout but settles in your bones. And yet, it is also a teacher. It teaches you to look closely, to listen not only to words but to tone, not only to gestures but to patterns, not only to promises but to follow through. Respect is not a single act, but a consistent way of being. It is a presence, it is a posture. When it is gone, the whole atmosphere changes. You may try to convince yourself otherwise. You may try to shrink your needs, dim your hurt, rearrange your boundaries, all in a desperate attempt to restore what has been lost. You may tell yourself that it is only a phase, only a moment of stress, only a misunderstanding. You may fight to keep the connection alive, believing that your effort alone can rebuild the crumbling foundation. But respect cannot be rebuilt by one person. Respect requires two hands holding the same rope. It requires mutual recognition, mutual effort, mutual care. When only one person is trying, the rope begins to fray. The soul longs for respect because the soul understands its worth. Even when the mind is confused, even when the heart tries to justify mistreatment, the soul whispers, "You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be honored. You deserve to be valued." That whisper can be faint at first, but it grows louder with every boundary crossed, with every dismissal endured, with every moment where your feelings are laid aside as though they weigh nothing. The soul does not lie, it does not exaggerate, it tells you when you are being diminished. Respect is not a luxury. It is not optional, it is not a bonus that you hope to receive from the people around you. It is the bare minimum that human dignity requires. Without it, even the strongest relationship becomes brittle. Without it, love becomes a hollow performance. Without it, trust becomes impossible. You cannot pour into someone who refuses to hold what you offer with care. You cannot continue to give when your giving is met with disregard. You cannot keep showing up where your presence is treated like an inconvenience. The loss of respect often marks the beginning of an ending, but endings, though painful, are not punishments. They are invitations, invitations to return to yourself, to return to your standards, to return to the truth that your worth is not negotiable. When respect fades, the soul begins to nudge you towards something better, something truer, something more aligned with who you are becoming. There is courage in acknowledging that respect has been lost. It takes strength to look at a relationship, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, and admit, "This no longer honors me." It takes even more strength to decide that you will not remain where respect has evaporated. For some people, ego screams louder than dignity. Ego says, "Fight harder." Ego says, "Prove your worth." Ego says, "Stay until they finally see you again." But dignity has its own voice. A softer voice, a wiser voice. It says, "Your soul deserves a place where it is cherished without begging." Respect is reciprocal, or it is not respect at all. You cannot keep offering gentleness to hands that return only carelessness. You cannot ask the river to keep flowing toward someone who builds a dam of disregard in its path. The river must move on, and yet the loss of respect does not mean the loss of compassion. Even when someone fails to honor you, you can still release them with grace. You can still choose to walk away softly, without anger, without bitterness, without the need for revenge. For the absence of respect from another does not diminish the respect you owe yourself. In fact, it amplifies it. Respect begins within. When others cannot offer it to you, you must offer it to yourself. You must listen to your own longing. You must honor your own boundaries. You must value your own peace. And sometimes valuing your peace means acknowledging that the place you stand no longer feels sacred. Respect is the foundation of connection because it is the foundation of humanity. And when that foundation cracks, you are not meant to kneel in the rubble. You are meant to rise, dust yourself off, and walk toward a life where your dignity is not an afterthought, but a priority. For when respect is gone, the soul does not break, it awakens. And awakening, though tender, is the beginning of freedom. There comes a moment in every life when the heart grows weary of explaining its worth to those who do not wish to understand it. Respect, like a gentle fabric woven by steady hands, cannot be patched with excuses or stitched with hopeful dreams once it has been torn too many times. When a person, a relationship, a room, or a conversation begins to treat your dignity as though it were optional, that is the hour when your spirit whispers a quiet truth. You do not have to stay where your soul is shrinking. And in that moment, the bravest act is not the stomp of anger or the slam of a door, but the soft departure of someone who has learned that honoring oneself is not arrogance, it is survival. When respect leaves a space, everything else becomes loud. Words grow sharper, tempers run hotter, and small disagreements suddenly swell into storms. People begin to talk over one another instead of to one another. Hearts turn into battlegrounds instead of homes. And in all that noise it becomes harder and harder to hear the voice of your own wisdom. But that soft inner voice is still there, humming like a song your grandmother once knew. It tells you that disrespect is not a misunderstanding. It is a choice to undervalue your feelings, your presence, your contribution, your humanity. The one who chooses disrespect may think they have won the argument, but it is you who wins your own peace when you decide not to wrestle in the mud that someone else rolled out for you. Walking away softly does not mean you are powerless. It means you have grown powerful enough that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. It means you have recognized that ego shouts, but wisdom whispers. Ego demands a dramatic exit, a grand explanation, a final jab to prove a point. But wisdom simply gathers its things, its pride, its grace, its self, love, and leaves with quiet steps. For when you walk away softly, you are not running from a fight. You are rising above a pattern. You are choosing to protect your light rather than dim it to match someone else's darkness. To walk away softly is to understand your own worth without flaunting it. It is to know that the ground you walk on is sacred not because others bow to it, but because you stand on it with integrity. You do not need applause to validate your leaving, nor do you need sympathy to justify it. You need only the courage to let go of what no longer honors you. And courage, real courage, is often tender. It tiptoes instead of stomping, whispers instead of roaring, and closes doors gently because it trusts that new ones will open with grace. There is a delicate dignity in refusing to match someone's disrespect with your own. Anyone can shout. Anyone can point fingers. Anyone can fire back with harsh words shaped by wounded pride. That requires no discipline, no depth, no wisdom. But to pause, to inhale deeply, to gather your strength, to choose silence over spite, now that is mastery. That is self-respect wearing its Sunday best. That is strength shaped not like a fist, but like an open palm pressed over your heart, reminding it to beat softly even in the presence of chaos. And so, when respect has left the room, do not chase after it, do not bargain with it, do not twist yourself into smaller and smaller shapes, trying to fit into the shrinking space someone offers you. You were not born to be compressed. You were not made to be molded by someone else's carelessness. You were crafted by love, by time, by experience, by struggle into someone whose presence deserves tenderness. And anyone who cannot see that is not your teacher, nor your judge, nor your keeper. They are simply someone whose chapter in your life has reached its natural period. Returning disrespect with silence is not surrender. It is strategy. Silence has a way of echoing through the chambers of a guilty heart far louder than any accusation. Silence leaves people alone with their own actions. Silence invites reflection where arguments invite defensiveness. Silence allows the truth to rise on its own without your hands forcing it upward. And in that silence you reclaim your time, your peace, your dignity. One day, when you look back, you will see that the moment you walked away softly was not the moment you lost something. It was the moment you found yourself again. You will remember how heavy your spirit felt in that space where respect had dissolved, how your joy dimmed, how your laughter thinned, how you twisted your words, softened your demands, and swallowed your hurt, hoping that doing so would restore what had already died. And you will realize that leaving was not abandonment, it was resurrection. Your silence is not emptiness. It is full of truth, full of boundaries, full of the unspoken declaration that your soul is not up for negotiation. Walking away softly is a form of love, the highest kind of love, the love you finally give yourself when no one else remembers how. So let your departure be gentle, but let it also be firm. Let your steps be quiet, but let your decision be unshakable. Let your heart break if it must, but let your spirit rise anyway. You are not walking away because you have no strength left. You are walking away because you finally remembered the strength you always had. And once you step into that new stillness, once you breathe the air of a space where respect lives freely again, you will discover that walking away softly is not an ending. It is a beginning of peace, a beginning of clarity, a beginning of a life where you no longer dim your light for anyone who refuses to see it. Because when respect is gone, you do not stay and argue. You do not beg and bargain. You lift your chin, you hold your heart, and you walk away softly, knowing that grace walks with you. There comes a time in the journey of every soul when you must decide whether you will keep pouring water into a cup that has learned to leak. Respect is the vessel that holds relationships together, and once it cracks, even the sweetest offerings fall straight through. The human heart is resilient, yes, but it is not meant to be stretched thin trying to prove its worth to someone who has forgotten how to handle it with care. When you feel yourself bending so far that your spirit trembles, when your voice grows hoarse explaining the same pain, when your presence begins to feel more like a burden than a blessing, that is when life taps you gently on the shoulder and says, "My child, it is time to go," not in anger, not in bitterness, not in a storm of accusations or a parade of final words that sting the tongue as they leave it. No, life asks you to leave the way the sun disappears from the horizon, quietly, gracefully, inevitably trusting that even absence can illuminate truth. For when respect slips through another's fingers, you cannot tape it back together with hope, nor stitch it with the thread of old memories. Respect must be lived, not begged for. It must be shown, not demanded. And when it is gone, You must let go of the illusion that staying longer will somehow resurrect it. There is a power in walking away that does not shout, a power in stepping back that does not bruise the air with rage, a power in silence that rises stronger than any speech you might have offered. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom reaching maturity. It is the Spirit saying, I will not compete for a dignity that is already mine. Sometimes the most courageous act you can perform is to leave without trying to leave a mark, without trying to win, without trying to be understood one last time. Because peace does not come from battles won, it comes from battles avoided. People often misunderstand soft departures. They imagine them as signs of surrender, as though stepping away means you could not handle the heat of conflict. But those who live with a peaceful mind know that walking away softly is the act of someone who has mastered their own fire. It means you have learned to control the blaze within you rather than let it consume those around you. It means you have chosen self-preservation over self-destruction. It means you have discovered that your worth is not tied to someone else's ability to recognize it. Sometimes it is not even the disrespect itself that breaks you. It is the attempt to pretend it does not hurt. You learn to swallow your disappointment until your throat burns. You dress your wounds with silence, hoping the other person will see the blood even if you never show it. You bend your back, you quiet your voice, you shrink your joy, all in the name of keeping the peace with someone who has forgotten how to offer peace in return. You move through rooms trying not to disturb the air, but the air is already heavy with things unsaid, and though your spirit tries to stand tall, you feel your own weight pressing down on your ribs. But then one morning, sometimes after a long night of wrestling with truth, you rise with a clarity that feels like fresh wind. You realize that your soul was never meant to survive on crumbs tossed from a table of indifference. You realize that the love you are trying to protect cannot thrive in the cracks where disrespect grows. You realize that staying silent to keep someone else comfortable is a betrayal of your own heart, and in that realization, you find the courage to do what once felt impossible. You choose yourself. You do not make a scene. You do not slam doors. You do not curse the earth behind you. Instead, you gather your strength like a shawl around your shoulders and step forward with the dignity of someone who knows their own name, their own history, their own worth. You leave footprints so soft that only those meant to remember you will feel them. You leave a silence so gentle that it teaches louder than any final speech ever could. You leave a space behind that becomes a mirror, and one day, perhaps not today, perhaps not soon, the one who disrespected you will look into it and see the truth their pride once refused to face. Soft walking is not about letting others off the hook. It is about letting yourself out of bondage. It is the recognition that your life is too sacred to be spent convincing someone to treat you with decency. It is the promise you make to your own heart that you will no longer settle for the bare minimum dressed as effort. It is the gentle declaration that your presence is a gift, and gifts are not meant to be mishandled. And as you walk away, you will feel the lightness return. The air will taste different, freer, kinder. Your steps will grow steadier, your back straighter, your voice stronger. The world will not change overnight, but your world will. You will discover that walking away softly is not an ending but a reclamation of peace, of pride, of purpose. You will come to understand that respect is not a luxury, it is a foundation, and a house built on anything less will tremble with every wind. You deserve to live in a place where your heart feels safe, where your voice matters, where your presence is not tolerated but treasured. And if someone cannot offer that, it is not your job to teach them. It is your job to protect yourself. So walk away softly with all the grace your life has taught you. Walk away with the confidence of someone who knows their value. Walk away not to punish, not to prove, but to preserve the spirit that has carried you this far. Walk away knowing that your silence is not an erasure, it is a boundary. Walk away believing that every step you take toward peace is a step back home to yourself. And when you reach that place where your heart rests easy and your spirit stands tall, you will look back with compassion, not regret. Because you will know that walking away softly was not leaving someone else behind. It was finally returning to who you were meant to be. There is a magic that rises when a person chooses peace over performance, when they allow calmness to sit where ego once lived. It is the quiet decision to stop wrestling with people who do not wish to understand, to stop proving yourself to minds already made up. When respect fades from a space, the instinct for many is to fight louder, to defend harder, to gather the scraps of dignity and hold them up like a shield. But there is another way, a gentler way, a wiser way. It is the choice to walk away softly, letting peace, not pride, guide your steps. In that choice, something remarkable happens. The world that once felt heavy begins to loosen around you. The breath you had been holding escapes your chest. The tightness in your spirit melts. For peace grows fastest in the places where you stop watering chaos. Ego thrives on noise. It thrives on competition, on last words, on proving who is right, who is stronger, who holds the final truth. Ego loves to pull you into battles that bruise your soul. Ego whispers, don't let them get away with disrespect. Don't let them forget you. Don't let them win. But calmness speaks in a different tone. Calmness does not shout. Calmness lays a gentle hand on your heart and reminds you that not every insult deserves a reaction. Not every slight is worth your sacred energy. Not every person has the capacity to meet you where respect lives. Calmness says, let it go before it scars you. Calmness says, you cannot control how others treat you, but you can control how you protect your peace. And when you choose calmness over ego, the whole world begins to rearrange itself around your decision. Doors you thought were locked begin to open. Roads you were afraid to walk start to reveal themselves. You see now that staying in a place where respect is absent only dims your light, and leaving that place with grace brightens it again. Peace has a way of restoring what ego tries to destroy. When someone has lost respect for you, you may feel your heart reaching for answers. Why did they change? What did I do? How do I get them to see me again? But peace teaches you that the need to understand every wound is sometimes a wound by itself. Peace does not beg for closure. Peace creates its own. Peace does not chase after explanations. Peace accepts silence as sufficient. Peace does not force someone to treat you better. Peace removes you from the reach of their carelessness. There is a beauty in walking away without announcing it like a parade. There is power in choosing not to scorch the earth behind you, even though your hurt might tempt you to. When you walk softly, you are not pretending you did not care. You are simply refusing to let disrespect turn you into someone you are not. You are refusing to let pain teach you how to be small. Calmness becomes your shield, not to hide behind, but to preserve the purity of your spirit. You see, peace does not erase the hurt, but it does bring clarity. When you walk away softly, the noise settles, and the truth rises from the ashes. You begin to recognize the difference between love that nurtures and love that drains, between companionship that cherishes and companionship that uses, between being valued and being tolerated. And once you see this truth, it is nearly impossible to unsee it. That is the blessing and the burden of clarity. It asks you to act on what you now understand. Peace grows when you choose distance over drama. Peace grows when you stop trying to convince someone to handle your heart with gentleness. Peace grows when you no longer need to be loud to be heard, when you no longer need to be right to be worthy, when you no longer need to be chosen to feel whole. Peace grows when you honor yourself the way you once hoped they would. Walking away softly is not about abandoning people. It is about abandoning the versions of yourself that settled for less. It is about leaving behind the days when you ignored your own intuition. It is about stepping out of conversations that dishonor your truth, stepping out of rooms where your presence is taken for granted, stepping out of relationships that ask you to shrink. In that walking, in that quiet departure, you reclaim your power piece by piece. You raise your head a little higher. You breathe a little deeper. You hear your own voice again. Your heart, which once twisted itself to be understood, begins to relax. You return to yourself, not the wounded version, not the pleading version, but the version who knows that their worth is not dependent on anybody's ability to respect it. And make no mistake, someone will notice your absence. Someone will feel the softness of the way you left, because softness carries its own echo. It lingers, it lives in the silence after the door closes. It sits in the empty space where your laughter used to rise. Ego-driven people expect storms when they mistreat you. They prepare themselves for thunder. But when you give them silence instead, it is the silence that teaches them. Not loudly, not cruelly, but truthfully. For the lesson of your silence is simple. I deserve better, even if I never said it out loud. And you do. When you walk away softly, you choose not only peace, but possibility. You choose the freedom to rebuild yourself without the weight of someone else's disregard. You choose a life where your spirit is held gently, where your heart is honored, where respect is not a negotiation. And when you reach that new space, you will look back with understanding, not bitterness. You will realize that leaving quietly was not an escape, it was a return. A return to peace, a return to dignity, a return to yourself. And no destination is more sacred than that. There comes a tender, quiet moment in every life when you finally understand that walking away is not the end of the story, but the beginning of your own healing. When respect has been stripped from a room, from a relationship, from a conversation, you may try, oh, how you may try, to patch the holes with forgiveness, with patience, with explanations spoken, until your very breath grows thin. But when the soil no longer receives the seeds of your dignity, you must gather what's left of yourself and choose a different path. And as you walk, your steps soft, deliberate, sure become a sanctuary for your spirit. For leaving gracefully, leaving without fire or fury, is not abandonment. It is a hand extended back to yourself. People often believe leaving must be loud to be meaningful. They imagine slamming doors, raised voices, declarations of frustration echoing behind you. But there is a kind of leaving that is far more powerful, the leaving that protects your softness while reclaiming your strength. The leaving that does not need to announce itself, the leaving that is guided by the whisper of your own worth. And in that tender choice to step away without bitterness, you are not only preserving your peace, you are opening the doorway for new love, deeper love, truer love to enter. For when you walk away softly, you make room for the healing that could never find you in chaos. You create the stillness where your spirit can breathe again. You open space for understanding to settle in your bones. You give yourself the gift of seeing your life without the fog of disrespect clouding every corner. Healing does not flourish in places where your boundaries are ignored. Healing does not grow in rooms where your voice is dismissed. Healing needs gentleness, honesty, spaciousness, and the freedom to feel what you have long avoided feeling. Walking away gives you all of that. There is a sacredness in choosing peace over pride. When you leave gently, you tell your heart, you deserve calm. When you walk quietly, you whisper, you deserve to be cherished. When you step back from disrespect, you affirm, your worth has nothing to do with what someone else failed to see. These quiet affirmations echo louder inside you than any external validation could. They rebuild the places that have felt hollow. They soothe the bruised corners of your spirit. They become the foundation on which you rise again. Leaving gracefully also teaches you something invaluable, that you are not responsible for fixing the blindness of others. You cannot force someone to see what you offered with sincerity. You cannot make them respect what they were too distracted, too wounded, or too proud to value. Their inability to honor you is not a verdict on your worth. It is a mirror of their own limitations. And when you walk away gently, without vengeance or cruelty, you refuse to carry their limitations into your future. There is a special kind of peace that follows a soft departure. At first, it may arrive like a hesitant visitor. You feel moments of quiet, moments where your breath deepens, moments where you are surprised by how still the world becomes. But gradually, this peace settles. It sits beside you in your mornings. It holds you at night. It becomes a companion you didn't know you had been longing for. With every passing day, you realize that what you left behind was not a loss. It was a release, and in that release, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You begin to dream without the weight of someone else's disregard suppressing your imagination. You begin to walk with more certainty, more clarity, more elegance. Your posture shifts, your smile returns. Your heart grows, not in spite of walking away, but because of it. Leaving softly leaves space for compassion, too. Not necessarily for reconciliation, not necessarily for return, but compassion for the truth that some people simply cannot give what they do not have. Compassion for the memories that were once sweet. Compassion for the person you were when you stayed longer than your spirit wanted to. Compassion for the lessons you learned and the wisdom you gained. Softness does not deny pain. Softness transforms it. When you walk away with gentleness, you do not carry bitterness. Bitterness is heavy. It distorts your vision, burdens your steps, and twists your heart. But a soft departure sets you free. It allows you to remember without resentment. It allows you to reflect without reopening wounds. It allows you to honor your journey without denying the difficulty of it. Softness is strength that has studied suffering and still chooses grace. Leaving softly also invites better people, better love, better environments into your life. When you create space by removing yourself from harm, life fills that space with healing. Doors you never noticed begin to reveal themselves. Opportunities that once passed you begin to recognize you. You attract people who speak your language of respect, who honor your boundaries, who cherish your presence with sincerity. You begin to understand that love is not meant to be earned through endurance, but welcomed through mutual care. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: by walking away softly, you teach others without speaking a single word how to treat you. Your silence becomes your boundary, your absence becomes your lesson, your grace becomes your message. And the message is clear: I am worthy of gentleness, and I will protect that worth. In the end, leaving softly is not about disappearing. It is not about being defeated. It is not about punishing anyone. It is about honoring the sacredness of your own life. It is about choosing a future where your spirit is not dimmed. It is about returning to yourself with open arms. And when you finally reach that new beginning, when you stand in the sunlight of your regained peace, you will not look back with regret. You will look back with gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, gratitude for the resilience, gratitude for the courage it took to walk away with grace. For leaving softly was never the end, it was your rebirth.